Good morning. I think I will start and people can actually join online and trickle in. Today, actually, I'm going to talk to you about a topic. The slides that I'm using are slides from 2009. When I first gave a presentation, and I think I gave this pretty much the same presentation to AMH in 2010. And I've hardly changed any of the slides. And yet, the topic that I'm going to talk is very relevant today as it was relevant in 2009, 2010 when I first came here. And that is individually and as an organization, how do we manage change? And trust me, change is the most, like culture, change is the most difficult thing for human beings to handle. We're all very comfortable where we are, and change requires a little bit of extra effort from our part to go from where we are, a stable state, to an unstable state, to find a further stable state. This span of change in human beings happens over 80 years. Okay. The infant you see there crawling on all fours, to the elderly at the age of 80 who's stooping down, cannot hold up his posture, just takes 80 years. And yet, all of us, knowingly or unknowingly, whether we want it or not, are actually going through the stage. And it depends on where you are. And I could actually challenge you and say that this is possibly a phenotypic or a body change, but in your mind, you could still be here, or you could be here, or you could be here. Okay. So if you ask me where I am in my mind, I'm somewhere between here and here. It's, hey, give me a break. Okay. I'm somewhere between here and here. And I like to be there. That is the most playful, rapidly growing, rapidly changing. I can do anything in this world. Mortality is not an issue for me. I can ride a bicycle. I can ride a motorbike without a helmet, or even without my hands on the steering wheel. There are all kinds of stuff, all of the stuff I can do between here and here. But then something dramatically happens here. I don't want to talk about this stage or this stage. Whether we like it or not, the way we approach life and the way life approaches us begins to change us unknowingly. And yet, when you have to forcibly change because the environment around you has suddenly changed and you have to change forcibly, then it requires quite a bit of adaptation to the new state that you're now being pushed or pulled into. And that's what I'm going to talk about. How, when we are pushed or pulled into a new state, how do we find stability from a very volatile external state? And this is a fact. What we have experienced globally over the first 2,000 years, so going from 0 to 2,000 years, we have now experienced over the last 24 years. So let me repeat this again. The change that has overtaken the world over 2,000 years, okay? If you think about how the wheel was discovered, the industrial revolution came in, and then the manufacturing, all of this happened over 2,000 years. We have witnessed all of that in the last 24 years. Meaning that all of us sitting in the audience here and all of you listening online have lived over the last 24 years. And what we have seen is a compressed, rapid acceleration of change around us. For example, the internet came into us only in 1996. Prior to 1996, there was nothing called the WWW, World Wide Web, wasn't in existence. Today, without the WWW, our lives come to a stop. Can you imagine if you didn't have your phone for 24 hours? I mean, people would just be having panic attacks if you didn't have your smartphone in your hand. And yet, the smartphone wasn't available in 1996. So we've adapted to all of these changes. And so The challenge for us, though, is not what has happened in the last 24 years. The challenge for us is what's going to happen in the next 20 years. And I've given you a time frame. If this is 2000 years, this is 80 years, the full life cycle of man, and this is the 24 years. So if you look at your life ahead over the next just 20 years, 2 decades, the change that is going to hit you is going to be even more phenomenal. Now, this change on a time scale is equivalent to, say, for example, the 2000 years, if you compress it down, let's say into a year, the 2000 years is 1 year, then the 24 years is just 7 minutes. So what happened over that period of time has changed in 7 minutes for all of us. And what's going to happen in the next 20 years is going to be a change that is going to be measured in seconds, not even in minutes. So that's how exponential the change is happening around us. The question is, are we prepared for this change? So Charles Darwin, this is his statement. It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can manage the change best. So it's got nothing to do with how smart you are, but how quickly you adapt to the change is going to sort of decide whether you will actually survive what is going to happen around us. So this presentation is taken from a John Cotter book called Our Iceberg is Melting. And you can see that May 24th, 2009 was when I first gave this presentation. I didn't even change the dates. I didn't even change the slides because I thought what was in that presentation is quite relevant. And this is a very interesting book to read. And it actually takes you only about an hour to read. This is John Cotter's Iceberg is Melting. This is a story of, and that's the book, Our Iceberg is Melting. And there's a second book, The Heart of Change. John Cotter, by the way, is the strategy guru at the Harvard Business School. Okay. He talks on strategy. His life has been on strategy. And he goes into organizations as big as Google or Microsoft and then brings about changes in these organizations. So it's quite an interesting read. But coming back to the penguins, okay, this is the penguin colony in Antarctica. None of you will be able to count how many penguins are there. Now, this was a picture taken of the penguin colony in 1995. This is a picture taken in 1995. However, in a short span of 25 years, if you go to Antarctica now to look at this penguin colony, you will see that the penguin colony has shrunk to about a third of this. A third of this. What has happened? As what has happened to the penguin colony, we asked, but the penguins have got another question. And this is the book. Okay. For the penguin colony, their challenge is, the icebergs on which we had a happy, stable life for generations and generations is now beginning to melt. Is beginning to melt. So our habitat in which we, grew our young, fished, and had a stable life, raised a family, and lived happily ever after for generations and generations now, the icebergs are now melting, and our very existence is being threatened. So the penguins, the leadership of the penguins get together and have a leadership meeting. And there's one smart penguin who goes around and says, look here, if the rate of change of the ice carries on like so many years, we will not have enough place to live. And hence we need to look to move to another iceberg or find another location for us.
5.6
Okay, we will have to move to another location for us to survive. And so this is how the discussion happens in the penguin colony. And what John Cotter nicely weaves in this book is he talks about the penguins go through the 8 stages of change management and how they decide that, if we carry on living as though nothing is going to be changing, then we are going to be extinct as a group of penguins. And the idea for this penguin colony actually comes from looking up into the sky and looking at the seagulls flying. They look at the seagulls and say, wow, they simply fly over. They don't have any territorial land. They can simply fly and then get on to any place where they want and roost, raise their young, and then fly off. Why can't we do the same? If seagulls can do it, we need to be creative so that we also should be able to be living like nomadic penguins rather than say that this iceberg is the only place we can live. We need to move to another iceberg and then find how we can be successful in raising our young and living a full life. So that's the whole theory behind change management that the penguins have now arrived at. So here is a quote, and this is, and I want to apply this to your life. I really want to apply this to your life. In most individuals' life, there will be 4 influencing people or situations that will dramatically alter your life. 1 every 2 decades. In each of these situations lie opportunities that will transform the course of your own destiny, that may significantly impact the lives of others around you. So, for a person who's lived 80 years, there would be 4 individuals that would have come into their lives that would dramatically influence the way you think, live, and adapt to your life here on earth. And if you take the first 2 decades, for example, the first 2 decades from birth to about 20, most influential people in our lives are either our parents, grandparents, teachers. These are the people whom we are closest with. Okay. The second 20 years of your second 2 decades is from 20 to 40. It could be a mentor, it could be a peer or colleague or someone who actually influences you in such a way that your life dramatically changes. I hate to say that it's going to be a spouse because most of us would actually get married between 20 and 40, and that's a dramatic change in life, but that could be for good or for bad. Okay. And funny enough, when they looked at the 4 people who dramatically influenced an individual's life, the spouses don't come into it. Amazing. You think about, you decide to marry someone and live with that person for the rest of your life, and yet that person does not influence your life forever. The people who influenced your life usually lie outside of your married life. It's crazy when you think about it. And yet, I just want you to sort of reflect for a moment. Each of you sitting here and each of you online have already had 1 or 2 people that have dramatically influenced your life and changed the way you think. Okay. For me, I've always said this. For me, it has been my grandmother. Okay. She was 4'10", had studied up to the 3rd grade. She had a 3rd grade education. And yet she was the most wisest woman that I've actually met in my life. And she instilled in me all the values that I needed to have to build my own life. So similarly, you can reflect in your own life and you will find that there is some individual who has touched and transformed your life that will shape your life, not just now, but for the length of time that you actually have here on planet Earth. There are 3 beliefs of success. Okay, there are 3 beliefs of success. And the first belief is believing in yourself. Most people don't have this belief in themselves. They think other people are always better than them. It starts with believing in yourself. Believe that learning always happens by feedback and observing others around you. No one likes feedback. When someone comes and says, look here, there's a better way of doing this, or you could be better in some way. No one likes feedback. Always people like to be praised. And if people come and tell you that, look here, this wasn't a job well done, people don't appreciate you for that. And also belief in that failures are part of your own learning. If you don't fail, you cannot learn. And they say, if you have not failed, you have not tried. So the 3 belief systems. And again, the belief in you is the absence of fear of change. If something is going to change in your life, do not fear that. You're applying for another job and you're not quite sure that the job is the right job for you. But it doesn't matter. You have to sort of believe in yourself and believe that the change is actually going to bring something positive for you. Even if it goes bad, that's okay. You have failed, but that failure would not have happened if you had not tried. The next thing is humility and good mentorship. Nobody can be taught if they're not humble enough to learn. Humility is a great value, human value that we have to learn from someone else who knows more than you. And this is where good teachers come in. Parents who've got wisdom or grandparents who've got wisdom come in. So good mentorship comes from good humility as well. And that's something that you need to have. And finally, the ability to adapt to change that is happening. None of us like change. And our ability to adapt to this change is critical for us to survive and then continue to grow. These are statements that I initially, when I used to first read them, I used to say, yeah, great statement, but it's really not practical. But trust me, where I am today, I believe in these statements. Only when an organization is threatened, losing momentum, or forced to break new ground will it confront its past and begin to understand why it must break away from the outmoded past. Transformational change is not reinventing the past in a different form. Transformation is completely reinventing ourselves in a completely new form. Okay. And normally, the status quo is perfect for us because we are comfortable in it. Usually, men change clothes when the trousers become too tight at the waist. Otherwise, you're comfortable wearing your own trousers. Women like to change clothes based on seasons and fashions. But, men are sometimes forced to change to your suit size because your waist size has grown and you need new clothes. Okay, so change is upon you. This was a slide from 2010. This is a slide from 2010. I'm putting the slide exactly back it is, and I have listed out the external forces that was pressing on the organization that was forcing AMH to take a new strategic direction. Okay, and the external forces were being best in class. I didn't believe that we were best in class. Fierce competition. Competition was still there, but now the competition is even more fierce. Declining financial results. If you don't grow as an organization, your financial results will actually continue to dwindle. 2010, technology was already accelerating. I had no idea that in 2024 we'll be dealing with AI and ChatGPT. I mean, it was not these words were non-existent in 2010, but there was already accelerating technology pushing on us. Mergers, acquisitions, and buyouts was fortunately not a problem for us as a not-for-profit organization. There was a rapid globalization in how healthcare was changing around the world. The customers, even in 2010, were getting more and more sophisticated. Can you think today in 2024 how sophisticated customers are? Everything is on your smartphone, social media, and that's how quick the pace of acceleration is. And finally, changes of regulation. 2010, NAHRA was not even existing. I remember, regulations were fairly easy in Bahrain in those days. You could come, apply for a job, get your license sorted out, and then you started working. Today, we can't even start a new service without getting a scope of work approved by NAHRA, leave alone apply for a physician's license to even start that service. And the regulations are getting more and more, and that makes life very difficult for not just for healthcare, but all the spaces. It's the same for education as well. I didn't know that education had much more regulations than even healthcare here in Bahrain. But it slows everything down. When you are over-regulated, it almost is like your hands are tied and you're asked to swim. Okay. And here is a timeline. See, our mission statement at that point was the same: provide high quality care. In 2000, 2010, 2020, and 2024, our mission statement had not changed, but our vision statement began to change. And so, one of the first things that anyone new coming into an organization and leadership would actually look into the organization and look and see how ready is this organization for change. So, when I first looked at in 2010 staff readiness for a new journey ahead, and you will find that 50% of the population or 50% of the employees of the organization are kind of reasonably ready for a change, but the other 50% of the organization would prefer a status quo. They absolutely do not, they are very comfortable. So in 2010, Manama was the only hospital, and we had a small peripheral satellite clinic. 50 to 60% of the organization was very happy with that state of affairs. About 35% of the organization wanted change. And I remember doing a cafe session with all of the employees and asking them, what is it that you would like AMH to look like? If you want to create in the future, what do you want that future to look like? And many interesting ideas came. And the first change efforts actually came out of that session. And the people said, look here. And there was 65% of the people said, we're absolutely happy where we are. Fast forward, however, we felt that status quo was not an issue, and we had to sort of create a change to a new future for us. And that created a gap between where we had to be and where we actually were. Okay. So the 2010 was the reality on the ground, and 2019 to 2025 was just a dream. And so this was a vision that we were casting. And the vision then was to be a leading healthcare organization in Bahrain with innovative practices in creating high quality care. So that was the vision. We wanted to be innovative and we wanted to be a leader. But then there was a gap that had to be sort of brought together. Simply having a dream will not fulfill the dream. So that was the challenge. So the state of readiness of the change was still only 35% of the workforce was ready for the change. 65% of the workforce was happy where they were. Okay. And I could have gone with either the 35% or I could have gone with the 65% who wanted no change. But obviously, I came here with change in mind because status quo was not an option for me, because if we didn't change, like the dinosaurs, we would actually die because we were not adapting to what was happening around us. Now, and the gap began to narrow. Okay. And the gap began to narrow through communicating the urgency for the need to change to all of the staff. And then it was much easier because we were only 350 employees. So you had to sort of talk to about 200 employees who were the kind of doubters in this change process to convince them that, look here, our iceberg is melting. And our iceberg is melting. And if you don't change, we won't have an iceberg to live on. We would be extinct. So we really have to move to a new state and sort of embrace this change, continue to grow so that we can be a thriving and a growing organization rather than an organization stuck in our past. So, and this change process was actually done through 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And AMH had a 10-year strategic plan in what we would actually do. The 10 years was taken and broken into 3 phases. And the third phase was supposed to finish in 2025. And in the third phase, we wanted to create a new hospital, build a new hospital for the American Mission Hospital. So that was the 10-year strategic plan. But trust me, we completed the 10-year strategic plan in 8 years because this was already built. This was built and open in 2023. The 10-year strategic plan went all the way up to 2025. So, and this accomplishment of this strategic plan would not have happened just by chance or by luck or somebody else did it. We had to do it. All of us. I didn't do it. It had to be a collective decision by the workforce and a lot of hard work that actually produced this change, shifting the curve to the right. And now I will talk to you about what is going to change from now to 2030. So this change process has happened, and all of this has happened. And now from 350 employees, we are 950 employees, and we're continuously evolving and changing. So you need to know what is going to happen the next. So we now have a 6-year strategic plan that takes us from 2024 to 2030. It's just like the government has a 2030 plan. We have a 6-year strategic plan, but this time it is compressed to 6 years and not 10 years. And again, when I look at staff readiness in 2024, that is this year, if I look at staff readiness this year, you see the same bell curve. The bell curve is that 50% of our staff are ready for this or excited about this change that's going to happen to 2030. The other 50% of the staff are happy with what we have and just carry on the status quo. But to me, we are creating a new vision. And, very soon, over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we will be talking about a new vision. The board has already had a strategic planning session in Dallas 3-4 weeks ago that I was there. A lot of people actually, was involved from this end. And again, this crafting of a new vision, a new strategic plan, and a new operational plan for the next 6 years is going to be done between now and April. April, the board is going to be here. And then the new strategic plan and the new vision is going to be rolled out. But you will have a taste of it even before the board actually comes in April. There is a service line meeting, I think, on the 13th of March, and I would encourage anyone to attend it because we will be talking about the vision strategy of where we are going to take AMH to 2030. But again, when it comes to staff readiness, this is typical of any organization, by the way. We are better than most organizations when it comes to staff engagement. But having said that, if I ask people the readiness to change, 50 to 60% of the staff are not ready for the change. Because for an organization to change, individually, you and I will have to change. Most people will say, yeah, I like the change as long as I don't have to change. I want to sort of continue working the same shifts that I need to work. The organization can make any changes, but not me. Don't touch my schedules. Okay? Unfortunately, when an organization changes, everything changes. It is intensely personal. For change to occur in any organization, each individual must think, feel, or do something different. If you do the same things that what we've been doing over the last 2 years, then the outcome of what we're going to get is the same as the last 2 years. So for us to have a new outcome and a new outlook and a new vision and a dream and all of that, we all individually and collectively, we have to come together, believe in this new vision, believe in this new strategy, and then start working in a different way so that the change becomes manageable for us, operationalize the change that we need. This is the change curve, and I will got a couple of slides on it. The 4 stages of change, okay? The first stage is the 35% of people who do not want anything done. I prefer the status quo. I love my office. I love everything. Don't change anything, okay? But then when change begins to happen, there is a state of shock and denial. You mean to say that I need to work on a Saturday? You need to say that I need to have an extra clinic? Or, it's not possible. And then from that stage, and you can see this is the mood of the individual. This is the mood of the individual at that point. Okay, it's neutral. And then as soon as the change begins to really happen, there's anger and fear. How come you've touched my schedules? How come you've changed my OR list? How come, how that's so many. And this actually results in anger and fear as the disruption begins to bite into the organization and the individual. And then you move into phase 3. People, there might be something good in this change, and maybe this change is good for me. And you begin to accept this change. And then finally, the 4th stage is the commitment and you start rebuilding it. That X mark is where we are today. That X mark is where we are today. People are exploring, people are looking, people are waiting, and kind of accepting the reality that, this change is good for us. It's going to help us. But that's where we need to get. And that is the gap that I talk about. The readiness to get to the rebuilding and the commitment phase is critical for an organization. And the quicker we get there, the quicker everything will move. The vision, the strategy, the operation, the execution of what we want to do has to accelerate rather than take the next 6 years for us to accomplish. For me, I am more a doer rather than a talker. I like things done. And I always say, it's nice to have a nice PowerPoint presentation, but you know what? At the end of it is we need to execute what we're talking about. So this is called the Kubler-Ross change curve, and you can read about it. And this, by the way, is the same curve. You can apply this curve in any organization, aviation, healthcare, hospitality, in the IT sector. This is the human emotions of change. We actually go through this. The anger, the bargaining, the depression, people get quite depressed. My gosh. And a lot of people in stage 3 quit their jobs. They would actually quit their jobs to say, you know what? I don't like this change. I would rather go and then find status quo in another organization, only to find that 5 years later, they haven't moved at all because they're stuck where they were stuck 5 years ago, where the rest of the world has actually moved on. There is another model for the change, and this is called the Levin model. The Levin model is, if you were imagine this is a square block of ice, and if you want to change shape. So I want to sort of change the shape of the square block into this shape. And one way I can do it is to chisel it. Okay? Chisel it and then reshape it. And now that's a hard way to do it. The simpler way to do it is completely convert that into water, unfreeze it, and then reshape it, pour it into a conical flask and freeze it, and it forms into a new shape. That's a much less painful way of bringing about change. But don't forget, this ice block ceased to exist. The ice block is melted, it is going to be water, but water that's not lost. But this water then has to be collected and then reshaped. The Levin's model of change is a bit more painful for most organizations. So I come back to Carter's 8-step model. This 8 steps, there is no step that you can skip in this. Okay? And it starts with 1 at the top, the sense of urgency here, right at the top here. So this is what I would urge and call you the burning platform, or the iceberg is melting. When the platform that you stand on begins to burn, or the iceberg that you're on begins to melt, there is an existential threat to your survival. This is like your house is on fire. Now, when your house is on fire, the first thing is to get you and your loved ones out of the house. It's not to go back and take your goods out of the house. And this is why in an aircraft, when there's an emergency landing, they'll say, leave all your personal things up and then evacuate. And this is a funny story. 3 years ago, there was an Emirates flight that was flying to Kerala in Trivandrum in India. And I'm emphasizing this Kerala thing. Okay? The flight was landing and there was a fire. As the plane was landing, the aircraft was on fire. And there was smoke filling the aircraft, and the crew was saying evacuate. So the chutes were coming out. And this, by the way, is recorded on smartphones. So we had the video of all of this was in social media. And evacuation orders coming out, leave everything behind and evacuate. And what you're actually seeing in the aircraft is people pushing to get their luggage out. They're telling them, evacuate without, and the fire is burning around them, smoke is, and there's still people fighting to pull the luggage out of the. This is the Kerala mentality. Even though you die, you try to save your stuff and you die with your stuff. Okay? But fortunately, in that air crash, everyone survived. And they say that everyone survived is because how well trained the Emirates crew was. The credit went 100% to the crew who kept their calm in the midst of this chaotic Kerala people trying to do all of this nonsense. The crew was calm and got evacuated everyone, and no one survived. I mean, and no one died in that air crash. So the sense of urgency that we create is important for us to decide how quickly we need to change. If we all sit back and say, you know what, AMH is doing great, we don't have to worry about it, everything is going fine, is going fine. Yeah, we got 20% occupancy in King Hamad American Mission Hospital. That's great. Then there's no sense of urgency there. Okay. The second step is you then have to build a coalition of leaders, of people who are going to champion this change. And this coalition of leaders actually comes from within the organization. It's not leadership sitting at the top. It is people who are on the front line who are actually seeing that the iceberg is melting. They see that the iceberg is melting and you see changes that's happening around. That's a warning that we sitting at the top needs to understand, and we need to quickly change and adapt so that the iceberg won't crash and we will all be lost. And then the number three is what we are actually doing now, creating a new vision, a strategic plan for 2030 for the organization as a whole that actually fits in with the 2030 vision of the country. So we are not, AMH is not doing something on its own in healthcare that is completely, divorced from what healthcare is happening in the island of Bahrain. So our strategic plan is closely linked to the strategic plan of the country's healthcare plan. But we have to sort of create this and be bold and then execute it. The enlisting of the volunteer army is all of you guys. The 950 employees, they have to be involved in this. I don't want a 35-65. We need to be 100% commitment. We need to, on that Ross Cobbler curve, we need to be on the committed acceptance sides that we all push together. Any barrier that stands, this is number 5, any barrier that stands in the way, you have to identify and remove. Because there are several barriers that stop us from changing. Our schedules is like this, our timing is like this, or there are, you can bring, or our IT systems are like this, and so on and so forth. The question is, if it is like this, why don't you change it? No one is telling you not to change anything. And that change management process has to come from the front line. Finally, we have to generate short-term wins to celebrate. This change is, you can't change a battleship in the water quickly, whereas if you're in a small boat, you can turn it around quickly. So for us to change the way we are going, a new strategic plan, a new vision, we have to sort of tangibly see some good results so that we can celebrate as a, hey, we have achieved the first 2 steps of it. And then finally, whatever things we are changing, we have to sustain it. The change is not for just for today or for tomorrow. As I said, we are not recreating the past. We are not recreating the past. We are recreating a completely new future for us. So that has to be sustainable. And finally, it has to be internalized as a change process that puts us on a path to a new future for us. We can talk about the past. I'm not saying don't talk about the past. Talk about the past, but look to the future. There's no point in looking over your shoulder. So these are the different steps, and you can read this in John Cotter's book, but I've just put it there. Help others see the need for change and the importance of acting immediately. You can't sit and then talk about it for next year. Pull together the guiding team, and the people will have to be credible. They have to have communication ability and analytical skills to see what is happening around them. Develop the change vision and strategy. This is what is happening now. And you will be involved in this, of how the new vision and the strategy and the operational plan is being created. And you will see that over the next 2 months. And 4, 5, 6, 7. This is what you saw on the previous slide. Communicate for understanding and buying. There are a lot of people who will stand on the sidelines and say, no, this is not for me. But you have to convince them it is for everyone. Empower people in the front line to act, to allow, to suggest and bring about the changes. It's not driven from the top. and create and celebrate short-term wins. Don't give up. It's a challenge. It's easy for us to say, you know what, the easiest way is the status quo and let's sit and do nothing about it. That's not an option for us. And then finally, create a new culture and make it stick. Because we're not going back to a past. We are reinventing, recreating, and looking into a future that puts us at the leading edge of a new vision that we're going to create. If you're going to be a leader, not just in Bahrain and the GCC, in how we deliver innovative care, then we have to have a new operating plan that actually gets us there. And with that, thank you. We have to be nomads, okay? Even though the penguins couldn't fly, the ideas that the iceberg was melting and they need to be nomads came from looking at the seagulls. The seagulls could fly. So maybe our operating plan is going to come from ideas that are totally outrageous and outlandish. But there's nothing outrageous and outlandish. People have to embrace it, look at it, and then make the necessary changes, because that is the only way we are going to survive as a leading healthcare organization in Bahrain. Thank you, and have a good weekend. And before we go, there's one other announcement. Some time ago, I announced this program called ELF, Employee Lift, Fund. What does ELF stand for? ELF stands for, in the 950 employees that we have here, several employees have got very personal needs. Okay, could be healthcare, could be family issues, it could be finance. There are several issues that comes up in the life of human beings. And we are all human beings, and all of us have had a personal share of aches and pains. So the ELF fund is completely a voluntary employee-donated fund that AMH actually holds. To actually, and there's a committee that will actually look at the needs that come from it's only for the staff of the organization. If the staff has got an existential need for a personal healthcare need that is not covered by AMH or by the government or something, and it's not that we can cover the total healthcare, but something towards helping that employee, then it comes out of the ELF fund. And how it is done is very simple. We can either donate through HR 1 BD, 5 BD, or whatever amount from your salary every month. There's a form that you can sign up, and 1 BD every month taken out from your salary is 12 BD a year. But that 12 BD, when it comes from 100 people, works out to a sum of money that is held by AMH to help employees only with their personal needs. This was announced, I think, about 4 weeks ago. And of the 950 employees, I'm glad to say that 27 employees have signed up for it. It is a shame. We are an organization that talks about compassion, love, and grace in everything that we do. And yet, when it comes to looking after our own, this ELF fund is only for our employees, it's not for anybody else, it's not for patients. For patients, we have over 100,000 BD in charitable funding that we put aside every year to give charity for poor patients. But the ELF fund is only for our employees. And it could be as small as 1 BD or it could be 5 BD. But, if you fill out that form, that money will actually be deducted and be put into this pool to help employees at the time of their need. So if you think that it's worthwhile, then please consider donating to that. Okay, as I said, as of yesterday, there were 27 employees out of 950 employees that are signed up. But many of you would not have known about it or not heard about it. And so I'm just reminding everyone, there's no compulsion on this. If you feel that this is important, then look at the ELF fund. Thank you. Have a good week.